Did you know, according to the 2023 ATL records, 71% of investors hold one investment property, 18% of investors hold two investment properties, 5.8% of investors own three investment properties, 2.1% investors own four properties, and 0.87% investors own five properties. God damn. And this is based on 2.5 million taxpayers in Australia that own investment properties. So the question you might be asking, what is stopping an investor like yourself from owning another property? Why is the percentage so small for the people that own five properties, like 0.87% of the entire population? These are the 5 reasons why. Reason number 1, the first property that they bought is bad, wrong, and they're bloody jaded. So a typical example is you have a person over here, they have a prime place of residence, and they decide to buy their first investment property. Say this is investment property number 1. And through hindsight, they've discovered this property has really bad capital growth. For example, in the last 4 or 5 years since they purchased this first investment property, after all that excitement, oh yeah, let's start a property portfolio, it's collecting dust. And now they're thinking, maybe it's time to sell this. And maybe I shouldn't get a second one because now I'm going back to zero. The second primary reason is poor cash flow management, which is the way they are making repayments on their existing 2 properties. For example, their first property is their prime place residence, and their second property is their first investment property, and say both of them are doing pretty well. Now they want to go to the second one, but they're stopped by poor cash flow. Let me show you. One example of cash flow to look at history, basically during COVID, the banks were giving money to us, right? Just throwing money in our face, 1.99% for interest rates, right? And, those people bought their first investment property. Back then, repayments were definitely less than the rent that they received, which means they clearly had a good cash flow. They weren't negative gearing because obviously they were positive gearing. There was a lot of positive buffer. And then what happened was those people who could get their second investment property and those that can't is how they decided to use the buffer. Did they save that money? Did they put it into the offset account? Or did they just bloody spend it? A second problem with cash flow is these investors who can't grow to a second investment property is they don't use an offset account. They either just basically put that original buffer into like some sort of transactional account or some high interest savings account, which is fuck all interest at that point, rather than putting into an offset account to offset their home loan. And if they had a prime place of residence, they probably should have put that money in the owner-occupied loan because that is non-tax deductible, while this one is kept at the original limit. But I'll digress on that on another video. And the third reason that stunts people from buying their second or third investment property, as you can see from the percentage, is they realize the first investment property they bought it in was the wrong structure. Which means in hindsight, they regret not buying the property under a trust or a company because they want to either from that first investment property pass on to their children, or they want to increase their borrowing power by putting it into a trust and letting that sit for 12 months. And then a accountant can write a letter to say this property is sustainable so that the bank doesn't count in the serviceability for the next loan. Whatever it is, what happens is they get stumped and then they're trying to sell the property in their personal back into the trust name, which incurs stamp duty, which means they're behind the 8 ball again from getting their second investment property. And the fourth reason, which I can gather from my own experience from talking to over 1,000 clients that go through TikTok and book a call with me in the last year, is that they feel like they're running out of time. Q, I'm like 45 and 50, I only have one investment property. I'm too old. I am too old. I've given up. Really? These type of guys need a bit of a mind slap from me, right? I've showed them case studies. I've got someone that was 60, even bloody 70 years old, an investment property, okay? The thing you got to know about this is if you buy a prime place of residence, yes, the banks would limit your terms from 10 to 15 years. But if you buy an investment property, the banks are happy to give you a 30-year loan. Even if you're bloody 60 and 30 plus 60, you're 90, the bank will still give it to you if you provide a clear structure how you're going to exit from that loan. Maybe you'll sell it. Maybe you can downsize it. Maybe there is an element of superannuation that can back it up. You just need a good holistic broker to represent you to sell that deal to the bank. And it's not too late to get another investment property. And lastly, reason number 5 is, I've maxed out my personal borrowing capacity. But they don't know they can actually buy a property through their self-managed super fund, and it doesn't care whether you've maxed out your own personal capacity as long as the rental income and your compulsory super contribution can get the other property. And I'll show you. For example, in the past 3 months, I've been working with clients who are in like their 45 to 50. They're on their property number 3. They want to get number 4, but they're bloody maxed out the borrowing capacity. Bank says no more money for you old folks. Well, when they book a consult with me and also through a financial planner that gave them financial advice, they realized that with 200K in their self-managed super fund, they can buy a property up to 550K, a 4th property, which the bank has told them, no more, you can't get it. But through SMSF, they can get another property. And I'm really surprised people between 45 to 50, they don't know about this strategy where you can actually get one more property, squeeze out one more, even if you're maxed out your borrowing capacity, maybe because you're transitioned to retirement, you're not working as much, as long as the money is coming through into your super and there's rental income, there's good rental yield, you can get another property. But again, guys, I'm not surprised by this data because it's the 80-20 rule, right? It's like 20% of the population own 80% of the property in Australia. The 80-20 rule never surprises me, and hopefully you fall in the the 1 to 2% or even the 20% that owns the 80% of the property out there, so that you can retire rich and wealthy, whilst the rest of the 80% there are renting, no financial wealth when they're retiring, and maybe they're just going to be bumming on Centrelink. Jump in the comments, let me know what you think.